at the heart of the commemorations for the 80th anniversary of the end of the Second World War. Jinping placed himself firmly at the center of both China's domestic political stage and the global diplomatic theater. Unlike the 2015 parade, where Xi appeared alongside former leaders and emphasized continuity within the Communist Party's leadership, this year's orchestrated spectacle left no room for ambiguity. Xi was the face, the voice, and the commanding presence. Every detail, from the order of visiting dignitaries to the cadence of the military parade, underscored a carefully constructed message that China's leader is not just presiding over ceremonies, but actively shaping the trajectory of global power politics. Diplomatic choreography has always been part of China's political toolkit, but Xi's performance this week went far beyond the familiar script of balancing domestic pride with international signaling. His diplomatic tour de force, as it has been described by observers, revealed a level of control and intent that resonated across capitals worldwide. In Beijing, the optics were unavoidable. From the moment Xi stepped onto Tiananmen Square, flanked by Russia's Vladimir Putin and North Korea's Kim Jong-un, the symbolism was immediate and undeniable. China was not merely remembering history, it was reasserting its claim to be a pivotal force in shaping the post-war order of the 21st century. The subtle but deliberate contrast with the past was a central part of the messaging. In 2015, the celebration of the 70th anniversary was grand, but it was tempered with gestures of collective leadership. Xi allowed space for party elders, generals, and statesmen, emphasizing the continuity of the Communist Party and the shared legacy of resistance against Japanese aggression. 10 years later, there was no such balance. The optics of the 2025 commemoration eliminated ambiguity. Xi alone stood as the embodiment of national unity, historical legacy, and global ambition. The absence of other senior Chinese leaders in equal standing reinforced the perception that power has now been consolidated around one figure more decisively than at any point since the days of Mao Zedong. The international dimension of Xi's maneuvering was equally striking. Rather than framing the anniversary primarily as a historical commemoration, he expanded it into a platform for China's global narrative. State media coverage emphasized not only the sacrifices of Chinese soldiers during the Second World War, but also the notion that China's current leadership represents the culmination of those struggles. The implication was clear: the lessons of history demand a strong, unified China, led by a figure who has proven capable of resisting outside pressure and steering the nation through challenges. For domestic audiences, this narrative reinforced Xi's indispensability. For international observers, it raised questions about whether Beijing was moving from historical commemoration to geopolitical reassertion. The presence of Putin and Kim lent a sharp edge to this symbolism. Critics in the West quickly noted that aligning the commemoration of World War II's conclusion with a public embrace of Russia and North Korea sent an unmistakable signal about the kind of alliances Xi is cultivating. But yet, from Beijing's perspective, this was part of a calculated performance. Standing with leaders who themselves face varying degrees of Western isolation, Xi signaled that China is not only prepared to withstand external pressure, but is actively building alternative centers of power. While Western analysts labeled this an authoritarian bloc, the Chinese narrative instead cast it as a sovereign coalition unwilling to bow to external dictates. This distinction resonated particularly with leaders from the global South, many of whom are increasingly skeptical of Western-led institutions. The diplomatic choreography extended beyond optics into substance. In the days leading up to the commemoration, Xi held a string of meetings with leaders from across Asia, Africa, and the Middle East, emphasizing themes of sovereignty, non-interference, and economic cooperation. Chinese diplomats carefully highlighted these meetings as evidence that, while the West dwells on confrontation, China is focused on partnership. The sequencing was deliberate. Xi first projected power at home through the military parade, and then pivoted to diplomacy, showcasing China as both strong enough to defend itself and generous enough to lead. By wrapping these gestures within the commemorative frame of World War II, he linked them to a broader narrative of justice, sacrifice, and historical inevitability. This blending of memory and ambition was not without domestic political purpose. Xi's leadership has faced questions in recent years amid slowing economic growth, youth unemployment, and regional discontent. The carefully managed display of unity and strength during the anniversary events served to blunt such criticism. By casting himself as the guardian of China's historical legacy, Xi positioned his leadership as something beyond ordinary politics, an essential safeguard of national destiny. The message was not just that Xi is in charge, but that without Xi, the cohesion necessary to navigate turbulent times might falter. In a political culture where symbolism often carries as much weight as policy, the imagery of Xi leading China through both history and modernity was intended to resonate deeply. For international audiences, the implications were more complex. Western governments, particularly the United States and its allies, saw the events as a statement of defiance and a reminder of Beijing's willingness to contest the existing global order. Yet among nations in Africa, Latin America, and parts of Asia, the perception was more nuanced. Many leaders interpreted Xi's diplomatic gestures as evidence that China is willing to act as a counterbalance to Western dominance. By framing the commemorations as a call for peace rooted in historical memory, Xi made space for China to present itself as a moral as well as a strategic actor. This dual appeal, strength at home, partnership abroad, was precisely the balance Xi sought to strike. Observers also noted the extent to which the entire week's events were crafted to reinforce Xi's image as both a domestic unifier and a global statesman. Speeches were laden with references to historical struggle and sacrifice, yet seamlessly transitioned into discussions of contemporary challenges such as trade disputes, climate change, and technological rivalry. The implicit argument was that just as China endured foreign invasion and hardship in the 20th century, so too will it endure external pressure in the 21st. In this sense, the 80th anniversary was less about the past than about the projection of future inevitability. The rise of China, guided by Xi, was framed as the logical continuation of history itself. Critics may dismiss such symbolism as theatrical, but the careful orchestration of events revealed its own kind of power. Diplomacy is as much about perception as it is about policy, and Xi demonstrated an acute awareness of how to blend both. By situating himself at the center of the commemorations, he reinforced the perception that his leadership is not merely a product of political machinery, but of historical necessity. In doing so, he sought to insulate himself from challenges both inside the party and beyond China's borders. For a leader whose grip on power has sometimes been questioned in light of economic turbulence, this week provided a carefully curated response: strength, stability, and inevitability. In the end, the commemorations were not just about honoring history, but about writing the next chapter of it. Xi Jinping used the occasion to demonstrate that he is not a caretaker of past legacies, but an active architect of China's future. By blending military spectacle, diplomatic outreach, and historical narrative into a seamless whole, he left little doubt that, at least for now, he is totally in charge.